nobody's recognised Crimea as Russian. Nobody sensible, not even the Chinese have done it. Not even Belarus has done it. Because they recognise that if they do that, then that opens up a massive Pandora's box for everybody to go around taking land and annexing it and saying it's theirs. So I think the international community wouldn't change the position. And there was sort of floated around that in Trump's plan, that they might recognise it. That's gone away because Trump's abandoned that plan. I think it's going to be very difficult for Ukraine to recognise Crimea because Crimea is Ukrainian.
Following Donald Trump's 2-hour call with Vladimir Putin, the US president has claimed talks would begin immediately.
We just spent 2.5 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and I think some progress has been made. It's a terrible situation going on over there. 5,000 young people every single week are being killed. So hopefully we did something. We also spoke to the heads of most of the European nations, and we're trying to get that whole thing wrapped up.
Sean, I'm sort of coming to the view that Donald Trump keeps saying lots of things are about to happen, and actually they don't happen.
Yeah, well, we know that wasn't going to happen because he said he was going to solve it all in 24 hours, didn't he? So,
after getting elected, not even after becoming president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that hasn't happened either.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting is what Putin said after that phone call. He said, we're thinking about working towards a memorandum of understanding about peace. He didn't say we're going to get this all wrapped up, did he?
Thinking about working towards a memorandum. Yeah, there's a lot of stages there. There's a lot of stages there.
Yeah.
Look, let's bring in John Foreman, who's the UK's former defence attaché to both Moscow and Kyiv. John, good morning.
Morning, Hugo, and morning, Sean.
Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Look, Donald Trump saying he's going to get this all wrapped up. Is that even remotely on the cards? Because we don't even know what this all being wrapped up means from a Russian perspective, do we?
No, I thought the word hopefully in Trump's statement was doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because he said this before, that with the wave of a magic hand and the weight of his presence and his position in his office would lead to swift peace in our time. And actually, I think the original aim for Trump was to have peace by 100 days, around about Easter time. That came and went, and now, like yesterday, was a massive volte-face by Trump. He's thrown away all the approach or strategy, if there was one strategy, by the administration since coming in, that try and get a ceasefire, stop the killing, and get the sides two together in Istanbul or the Gulf, bang heads together, come up with a deal, and that's been thrown away. And he pivoted quite quickly away from that towards the Russian position. He's abandoned his position of ceasefire. That's gone. His coordination with Europe, it's gone, because it's only a week and a half ago that the US and Europe were saying we'll have a ceasefire first. He's abandoned that, and also thrown Ukraine under the bus to a degree, left it very vulnerable. So I think peace is elusive, and as we saw only last week on Thursday in Istanbul, the two sides have a very different approach. The Russians came with a set of ultimatums for basically Ukraine to surrender.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's relatively easy to see what the two sides' red lines are at the moment, in that Ukraine's red lines are that Russian troops withdraw from all the territory they have occupied and the war ends, whereas Russia's red line is that they get to keep at least Crimea, and the government of Ukraine is replaced, and they get guarantees on the future of, joining of NATO and the EU and other bodies like that. Is it possible, is it even logically possible that some middle ground can be found between these two opposing sides?
Yeah, I think so. If you would go back to the Istanbul discussion of 2022, I actually thought that the two sides weren't that far apart there. This was before the horrors of Bucha and the Russian war crimes in the occupied territories became clear. And obviously no Ukrainian president was going to sign up to a peace while Russia was murdering its civilians and disappearing and raping its women and children. But actually, I thought at the time there were two sides weren't far apart. They would cease. I think it'll be a de facto peace for territory deal. Russia would probably retain what it occupied. Ukraine wouldn't recognise that. They'd fudge the issue around Crimea. Russia wouldn't demand massive demilitarization of the Ukrainian armed forces or demand regime change in Kiev. So, and 3 years later, we're back where we were. I think Putin sending Medinsky, the leader of the delegation, was a sort of regression from that Istanbul position back to a position of demanding Ukraine subjugation, which they saw in Minsk or in Belarus before until February, March 2022. So I've always thought that there was a deal there, but of course, since then, Ukraine's become a lot stronger. Russia's got more territory. There's a lot more blood and treasure been spent on both sides. And I think trying to get the two over the line is going to be very, very difficult. And with the Americans backing away, if we believe Trump, then that's going to be even more difficult.
If the price for peace is recognising Crimea as Russian, do you think it's plausible that A, that Ukraine would do that, and B, that the rest of the world would do that?
Well, nobody, let's take the way back to front, nobody's recognised Crimea as Russian. Nobody sensible, not even the Chinese have done it, not even Belarus has done it, because they recognise that if they do that, then that opens up a massive Pandora's box for everybody to go around taking land and annexing it and saying it's theirs. So I think the international community wouldn't change the position. And there was sort of floated around that Trump's plan that they might recognise it. That's gone away because Trump's abandoned that plan. I think it's going to be very difficult for Ukraine to recognise Crimea because Crimea is Ukrainian. Now, we may say the realities of the ground have changed, but I think that's why in Istanbul they parked it. They said they'll push it out to 25-year temporary peace and was sort of go through the UN in due course. But that was to get past that issue. Because now, 3 years on, Russia believes Russia believes Crimea is even more firmly Russian than it has done before. And I think it's going to be very difficult for Ukraine to accept that.
Finally, John, what leverage does the United States and Trump in particular have over Vladimir Putin left? I mean, because his position as relates to Putin seems to have hardened up a little bit in recent weeks, at least before yesterday. Could he threaten sanctions? Would that do anything at this stage? Or, I mean, what has he got to sort of hold over him?
Well, I mean, last week they were threatening sanctions, and yesterday he says he wants peace. He wants peace and trade. So we don't know what he believes. It depends which side of bed he gets out of. I think this capriciousness and his lack of his own moral compass and lack of clear understanding of what he wants to achieve is really hampering any move towards peace. I mean, I think there are massive sanctions on the table. The Congress has put them together. He could increase arms. He could increase intel sharing. But it doesn't really matter what tools he's got if he's not prepared to use them. And so far, he's been not prepared to use them. He's been talking about carrots, not sticks, and that happened again yesterday. And Putin, I think, was very happy. He's avoided sanctions. He's got a vague talks about talks. He split US and Europe, and he's avoided a ceasefire. I think at the moment, Putin has the upper hand.
Thank you very much indeed. That's John Foreman there, the UK's former defence attaché to both Moscow and Kyiv.